Hi everyone, it's Kristen. Today we're going to be talking about Fantastic Four 278. This is, of course, in 1985. And I referenced, said that Doctor Strange 75 was going to be mentioned in here. And you'll see why a little bit later in the issue. But I just thought this issue was cool because it's kind of the origin story of Doctor Doom, which we've talked about Doctor Doom a lot with the most top 10 most dangerous villains, which if you want to see who number 1 was, you should watch that video. And also the psychology of superhero. I gave you kind of his origin story there, but this flushes it out a little bit, so that's why I like this issue. And it's also a kind of a condensed version of his origin, because of course there was a whole mini series about his origin that they put out, which was really cool. But you know, if you can single thing about, you know, how Doctor Doom became Doctor Doom, they might like the condensed version better. That just makes me think of The Office, Kevin, like where he's like, why say so many and so little words will do, except he says it all weird and goofy. I just saw like an advertisement for The Office and him saying that quote, which is why it sticks fresh in my mind. My brother actually introduced me to that show, and it's really funny. Like I enjoy it. I mean, there's some issues. I'm talking about comic books, so of course I say issues, but some episodes that I liked more than others. But you know, I especially like the Jim and Pam storyline. Of course, I mean, most girls like that storyline. You know, I mean, in the end, you know, it all works out. You know, they're meant to be together, so it all works out. Okay, sorry. Back to this. So we see Doctor Doom saying, "Oh, look, True Lies." That was an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie in the 80s, 90s. Anyway, Jamie Lee, it's really good. Sorry. I get distracted super easily. Anyway, so he says, the time has come. And so you see Kristoff, his pupil, his person that he is, you know, basically his apprentice, has come in. Okay, so brief story about that. Dr. Doom was talking to Kristoff and his mom when another person had taken control of Latveria, and that person's robots killed Kristoff's mom right in front of Doom. So Doom took that as a personal insult for them to kill a citizen of his country right in front of him. So he ended up kind of adopting her son, Kristoff, which he didn't know at the time, but Kristoff's dad is Reed Richards' like half brother. So his most hated rival is actually like, you know, part of Kristoff's family. Like, anyway. Soap opera. That's all I'm going to say. So anyway, so Kristoff is with his tutor, and, you know, Doom is like, hey, you know, the time's come, follow me. And Kristoff's like, I've never been to this part of the castle. What's going on? And then he sees like all these Doombots, and he's like, what the heck is going on? I don't understand. And he's like, you're not the master. You're merely one of his robots. So he calls Doom Master. I'm sure Dr. Doom said, you can call me Master, because that's Dr. Doom for you. And he said, the Doombot says, our master is dead. All of us Doombots know that we're Doombots in the presence of other Doombots or in the presence of the master. But if we're by ourselves, we don't know that we're Doombots. And the master has imprinted his can't tell the difference between a Doombot and Doom, basically. Which I thought it was interesting that they brought up telepaths, because of course I associate that mostly with X-Men, Charles Xavier, but there are other telepaths, and the Marvel Universe. That's just the one I associate the most with telepathy because Charles Xavier, X-Men, my favorite. Okay, so anyway, the Doombot says, it's time for you to take your place as master of Latveria, because Doom knew that the people of Latveria follow a robot, so we needed a what we come in on is you see Doom and his father, and my bad. I'm pretty sure it's Valeria. They come across them, and Doom's father says, the Baron blames me for his wife's death. She has cancer, and I couldn't cure my healing powers or my potions. So he's coming after me. So they run for their lives, which, okay, it's weird because, I guess Valeria just runs, away somewhere else, because you see just Doom and his dad, laying in the cold snow, almost dead and half frozen, but Valeria is not. She didn't have to flee for her life because she's not really, she's like a childhood friend of Doom. She's not actually part of the family. So unfortunately, Doom saved, but his dad dies because of his injuries and, probably frostbite and all. And so Doom, of course, is very upset. And he refers to himself in the third person a whole lot. And he's just he's done. He's first my mom, now my dad, the world is going to pay. And Valeria is this isn't healthy. You need to go. He's going through his father's things, Warner Von Doom, and he's like, this is all I have left of him, potions, herbs, that won't help me. And then he comes across a trunk of his mom's things. Her name was Cynthia, and okay, so what happened to his mom is that they're gypsies, and back even in the late medieval times, people considered gypsies dirty, lazy. They didn't want to work, just because they had their own culture and their own way of doing things, and they traveled a lot. They thought they kidnapped children. It took the kids with them, and so basically nobody, so basically they're saying that pretty much nobody liked gypsies, especially the Baron and his guards, and they persecuted gypsies. And his mom, Cynthia, was tired of it. She's so she had been brought up to study magic and sorcery, and she talked to demons. Scarlet Witch, she was brought up, as a gypsy and taught sorcery and stuff, so makes sense. Kind of along those lines. So, and I've said this before, you don't make deals with evil people or demons, because they're of course always going to betray you, because what's in it for them to uphold their end of the bargain? Seriously, but these people do it all the time, and they just need to quit it. They just need to stop, because they just have no sense. So basically, she makes a deal with the devil, Mephisto, and says, hey, in exchange for power, in order to kill the people that are persecuting my people, I'll give you my soul. And he's like, okay, deal. So what he doesn't tell her, so by her, going into the village, killing all the Baron's men, she also ends up killing all the kids in the village. Because, yeah, Mephisto promised her power, but he didn't say that she'd be able to control it. So he wanted all the kids in the village to die. So she did exactly what he wanted to do. And, yeah. So she was so horrified by what she had done, but of course she couldn't undo it. She actually was killed by one of the Baron's guards. She was stabbed. She died in her husband's arms and made her promise that her son would not follow in her path. Like, and you see where that where that went. And that's why, like, Doom, we talked about, I think, on Psychology of Superheroes, Doom is obsessed with his mother. And that's why you'll see in a little further along that he's obsessed with, saving his mother from this deal that she made for herself. I don't know. I mean, she knew, of course, that she would spend eternity being tortured because, Mephisto has her soul. So I don't know why she made that deal. But people get desperate and they don't really think about the consequences fully all the way through. Anyway, so she was killed. Now her father's killed. And Doom's like, that's it. I've had it. Like, the world basically has to pay. Like, they have to pay for the crimes against the family name, like Von Doom. And, Valeria is like, you gotta let this go. You have to let this go. You need to turn back to life. Leave that, because he starts to dabble in black magic. He starts to learn everything he can about sorcery. Like I said, he once challenged Doctor Strange for the title of Sorcerer Supreme, which we've talked about that before. Which, in like all the Fantastic Four movies, they've never really talked about that, never really touched on that. I think because that just complicates things, honestly, and it does make it more complicated. But him being such a complicated villain makes him a better villain, I think. So maybe in the next Fantastic Four reboot, which will be the third one now, they'll actually, incorporate that into his origin, but we'll see. I don't know. I mean, but they have Doctor Strange now, and the, like, mystic arts and sorcery and dark arts, so maybe. I guess we'll see. Anyway, so Valeria is like, you have to let it go. And he's like, no. Everyone must pay. Everyone must pay. And she's like, so it's true. The man I grew up with, that I wanted to have children with, the man I love, is dead. And she's like, I pity you. Poor Victor. And he says, do not. The joys of wife and family are for lesser men. Victor Von Doom has no need of love, be it from a woman or a child. I am absolute. And this is how he talks. Like, he is very full of himself. He's very like, I am the best. I'm perfect. Like, there's no one better than me. And he talks about himself in the third person a lot. So basically he says the only thing that will satisfy him now is knowledge. So he's trained himself in the dark arts, and now he must, as he calls it, he must add to his mastery of sorcery. He must fill his mind with the fruits of modern magic of science. So that's where the science comes in. He wanted to master the mystical realm and like the modern world through science. And I mean, he is brilliant. I mean, and so then they come in on him going to, it just says State U. They don't say what university it is, but it is the best university there is, period, because that's what it says. And you see Reed Richards is right here. Doom's door was open. So Reed, being curious, he comes into Doom's room and starts looking at his notes and his calculations. And Doom's like, who are you? What are you doing in my room? And he's like, oh, I'm Reed Richards. We met on registration day. And he's like, your calculations are off just by a couple of decimals. I mean, but if you're experimenting with, it says transdimensional warps, you want to be careful because, yeah, your calculations are off by a couple of decimals. And, of course, Doom's like, get out. And he's not listening because, of course, he thinks he can do no wrong. Anyway, so his assistant, Kurtz, they give him a name, but they don't really say anything else about him, like why he's doing this, why he's helping Doom. We don't know anything really about him. He says, I set up the machine to your specifications, but I'm worried that the Dean will find out because you're doing forbidden experiments. You're definitely not supposed to do that. And he's like, silence. I don't need you questioning me. Just do as you're told. So his machine literally blows up in his face because his calculations were off. Basically what he was trying to do is contact the netherworld so he could talk to his mom. Like I said, he's obsessed with his mom. So yeah, his machine literally blew up in his face. Kurtz is fine, but Doom got the brunt of it. And of course the Dean's like, you're expelled. You cannot be here. You cannot go into any university. No one will have you. Get out. And Doom, he's like, what happened to my face? And he's like, oh my gosh, my face. I'm horribly disfigured now. I'm no longer perfection. So I have to hide my face from the world for the rest of my life. No one can ever see my face. I mean, he's very overly dramatic also as a villain, I will say. It reminds me of like Phantom of the Opera, where he's disfigured, so he covers, half of his face where, so people can't see his disfigurement. Also reminds me of Rigoletto. Same kind of thing. Like he hides his face because, and a lot of other stories that deal along that line. But Doom's like, oh, I'm disfigured and I'm supposed to be perfect, so no one can ever see my face again because they can't know that I'm not perfect. That's I feel like that's his mindset because he expects perfection of himself. And so since his face is no longer perfect, he can't present his face to the world because it's not perfect. No one can know that he's inferior in any way. So he hears this rumor of a group of monks called the Wise Ones that have an even greater understanding of mixing science and magic. So he searches for them. And they're somewhere in Tibet. He searches for them for, it doesn't say how long, but it says it's been, so long since I've even seen someone's face or heard someone's voice. So you got to think it's been quite a while. And the monks find him, take him in, and say, oh my gosh, he's almost dead from hunger and cold. And it's been 900 years since we've even seen anyone this close to, our cave, our monastery. And there is actually a prophecy that the monks have learned of, that when one comes to you having mastered aspects of magic and hides his face from the world, he will become your master. And they think that is Doom. And they taught him everything they know, and he actually exceeds them. And they even say that, we hail you as our better, Victor Von Doom, we hail you as our master. And Doom even says, I worked hard for this moment. And he has a task in mind. He asked them to use their mystical furnace to build him this mystical, magical, amazing armor that no mortal has ever worn. And they ask him, are you okay? Does it hurt? And he's like, again, he's like, pain is like love, like compassion. It is a thing only for lesser men. What is pain to Doom? Like I said, he likes to speak in the third person. But I mean, I think some villains need to do that because you just kind of, it makes them obviously a villain, I think, when people speak about themselves like that in the third person. Anyway, so, and they're like, now the mask. And they're like, oh, careful, master. It's still warm. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Put it on. And he's like, no one will ever see my hideous face again. Victor Von Doom is gone. And now there's only Dr. Doom. And he cries out in pain because he put this, like, red hot mask, metal mask on his face. So his face is even more disfigured. It doesn't make sense, but okay. So he immediately flees out in the snow to cool his face off. Anyway, you know. So there's a rumor that he wants to be called Dr. Doom because he heard someone call Reed Richards Dr. Richards, and he feels like he's superior to Richards and pretty much everyone else in every single way. So there's no way that Reed can be known as a doctor because, you know, he has a little bunch of doctorates, a bunch of degrees, and Doom can't because, of course, he would have finished school, would have gotten degrees if, you know, he hadn't been caught doing that dangerous experiment that blew up on him. That's the rumor that's why he wants to be called Dr. Doom, because he wants everyone to know that he's just as good, if not, well, you know, if not better than Reed. And so this is how he appeared, you know, basically in his first appearance with the Fantastic Four. You know, if you're like, well, and Fantastic Four 5, if you're like, well, that doesn't look like Dr. Doom, it's kind of not. And then, you know, the remembrance machine goes on, and they're like, remember who foiled your plans, remember, you know, and then in the second time he met them, Fantastic Four 6, you know, the second time he recruited Namor, the Submariner, Prince of Atlantis, because he realized, okay, well, maybe, that he couldn't beat the Fantastic Four by himself, so he was going to recruit people to help him. And Namor ended up betraying him because he shot the Baxter Building off into space. And Namor ended up betraying him by bringing it back down to Earth, saving the Fantastic Four. Because Namor has a thing for Sue Storm, and she kind of likes him back, which is kind of weird, but, you know, soap opera. And it works for this story. I mean, you know, if Namor didn't have a thing for Sue, he wouldn't care what happened to the Fantastic Four. So Doom said he wouldn't harm Sue, and Namor's like, okay, but of course Doom went back on his word because he had to get rid of all the Fantastic Four, and so Namor saved them by bringing them back down to Earth. Anyway, so Doom says, you know, stop the machine, you know, I'm done. I know what I did wrong. And basically what he's saying is like he relied on someone else to help him carry out his plan, which is not what he should have done. So yeah. And the Doombots are like, but the program's not done. And he's like, silence. And of course now Christoph is Dr. Doom. So they're like, oh, well, okay, well, the exoskeleton suit is done, so I guess we're done. Then if he says stop, so, you know, he says now it's time for the destruction of the Fantastic Four. So now we see the Human Torch out with Alicia Masters. Okay, more soap opera time. So Alicia Masters first dated Ben Grimm, the Thing. She's blind. She couldn't see Ben, so it's kind of like a Beauty and the Beast kind of thing, where she loved him, you know, in spite of what he looked like, because she could, of course, like, she uses her hands to see people, and she felt his rough exterior, but, you know, she loved him for the person he was. And now, Johnny, the Human Torch, is dating her, which is weird, because Ben decided to stay on Battleworld, like we talked about the Beyonder first Secret Wars, because on Battleworld he can control his transformation, like he can change into Ben Grimm whenever he wants to, and then change back into the Thing. So he stayed there. Yeah. So while he was gone, Alicia, because I guess they kind of kind of ended things when he decided to stay there. So she and Johnny like started dating, which I'm like, well, that's weird. But, and she even says, oh, well, you know, because Johnny's like, I miss the thing. Like, it's hard with him not being here. And Alicia's like, well, at least we know that our relationship had nothing to do with his choice to stay away. Like, that's bull. Of course, like, he still cares for her. So, of course, part of him is like, yeah, I can't be around you guys because, you know, you're together now. And, you know, I still love her and you. And so I just can't do it. I mean, anyway, so, okay. So an interesting thing to point out. I'm not going to say this word, but they're looking at this poster of this preacher who's preaching on a racial equality and let us, you know, we're all in this together. And someone has plastered this, you know, banner over it. Like I said, I'm not going to say the word. If you remember in God Loves, Man Kills, they also used the N-word, which I was pretty shocked by. And it even says approved by the Comics Code of Authority on the front. Sorry. So I'm surprised that they let them do that at that point, but I'm not going to say it. But that God Loves, Man Kills, the X-Men storyline was around the same time as this story, so I honestly don't know if that's changed. I have not seen that word in comic book print, you know, in recent years, but I'm just surprised, you know. So Johnny, of course, is disgusted by this, and he sees this kid, like, just, you know, putting up, you know, the banners over the posters, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, oh, well, you know, how could you believe this garbage? And he's like, well, but if he's just preaching, you know, what's true, or, you know, just honest. Mr. Unger says the only way we can, that's the cult leader he's following, says the only way we can ever achieve peace is to acknowledge our hatreds and send all the inferior races back where they came from. And Johnny says, what? Like, good grief, kid, this is America in 1985. I mean, seriously, like, you hear that and you're like, what the heck? Oh, goodness. Anyway, like, and Johnny's like, where did this clown come from? Nazi Germany? Anyway, and the pamphlet itself says hate in big letters, and it's saying, read the word and be set free. Hate, the only path to the future of America, by H.M. Unger. Yeah, I know, but, and Johnny's like, get out of here before I really lose my temper. And, you know, Johnny's really upset, and he's like, look, Alicia, I gotta cool off. I gotta go. I mean, and she's like, what's going on? Because, of course, she can't see, so she doesn't know. So, and then, okay, so basically, as brief as I can. This is already going kind of long. So this is Psycho Man lurking in the shadows, and he's like, good. You know, Johnny kept the pamphlet. So, Psycho Man, he's from the Microverse, and he uses like emotion rays to disrupt people's emotions and basically, you know, spread hate and chaos. So that's what he's doing with Mr. Unger. Like, Mr. Unger is a puppet of Psycho Man, and actually Psycho Man created him, and his actual name is Hate Monger. And he's an android, and he can actually change into whatever shape he needs to in order to appeal to whatever group he's talking to. Like, if he's trying to pit men versus women, when he's talking to men, he's a man. When he's talking to the women, he's a woman. When he's, you know, trying to pit young versus old against each other, talking to the young people, he's a young person. Talking to old people, he's an old person. White versus black, you know, white guy talking to all the white people. You know, black guy talking to all the black people, and, you know, etc. Like, he can change into whatever he needs to in order to, like, stir up trouble. And his, the pamphlets Psycho Man actually created, and they actually amplify the hate. Like, you're infected, basically, with like the longer this pamphlet is around you, the more you touch it, you know, just by touching it, you start to be affected by it. And he goes after Sue Storm, turns her into Malice, this terrible... How much longer do we have? Not that much longer. I'm going to try to wrap this up really quick because this is running long. I apologize. Usually, you know, I like cut it off, but I think we're almost done. So he uses Sue Storm, changes her into this villain Malice to destroy the Fantastic Four. Reed realizes what's going on, snaps her out of it. You know, everything's good. Okay, so the reason we talked about Doctor Strange 275, yeah, is because of this. So we see Reed Richards, you know, he's doing experiments and, you know, testing Franklin because they're worried about him because he just destroyed, you know, Mephisto. And so they're worried about him. They're worried about his powers. They're making sure the power blockers are in place. Actually, you know, I am going to cut this off because it's running super long and I forgot there was a lot more to talk about. So I am so sorry. I hope you join me for part 2. That way, you know, if you have to stop in the middle of it, you don't have to like try to find your way all the way through it. So let me just jump over to the next video really quick and hopefully you will join me for that one. And we need to talk about the fact that She-Hulk is a member of the Fantastic Four. I think that's part of the reason why I chose this issue also. So I hope you join me for that, part 2.